graphing linear equations. So now what we're going to do is learn how, or remind you how to fill out a T-chart. I put 2 T-charts here. It's actually the same chart, but on the GED test or other places, you may see it listed vertically like this, or you may see it horizontally. It means the same thing, and it has X values and Y values, okay? The X value on the horizontal is always the top. We do alphabetical order, or if it's vertical, it's the first one, just like your points that go on the graph. The X always goes first and the Y goes second. So what I'm going to do with this first one is fill out this one and this one so you can see that no matter which direction it goes, we're going to have the same information to graph. Okay, now every time they give us a chart to fill out, they're going to give us an equation or a function to work on to get these Y values. Now you actually, let's see, I don't know if okay, to fill this out, you don't have to, now listen to this, you don't have to solve for Y first like we did yesterday. You do not have to. All you have to do is plug the X value in where X is and then solve for Y. My suggestion is, since you're going to have to practice solving for Y so many times, I would solve this for Y first, because you're always going to be given an X value and you have to find the Y. So let's just solve for Y because we need the practice anyway. Okay, so from yesterday, solving equations, we always put a line down through the equal sign so that we can see the 2 balanced sides. And we circle the Y because that one, we want to leave that alone and get rid of all this other stuff over here so that Y down here at the bottom will be by itself. Okay, so we found out that the first thing we're going to get rid of is all of this X because I don't want any of this here. So I'm going to subtract 7X, and notice that I put it in a column of its own over here. We explained yesterday that if I put this minus 7X under here, then I trick myself into thinking this might be 0, 7 minus 7. But you can't do that because these are X's and this is just a constant or a plain number, and you can't combine those. You have to list them separately. So now what we have is when you take 7X and minus 7X's, that's gone, and we have a negative Y equals 7 minus 7X. Yes? And we want Y by itself, not negative Y. Now, what we found out, bless you, what we found out is this negative is actually a negative invisible 1 in front of the Y. So when I circle the Y, I know that I have to get rid of the negative 1. Notice that the negative 1 and the Y are smashed together, and that means they're multiplied. And the only way I can get rid of this negative 1 is to do the opposite operation of multiply. So I'm going to divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1. I divide everything by negative 1 when I divide. So let's see what we end up with as an equation to work with to fill out our T-charts. So when I divided by a negative 1 divided by a negative 1, the negatives cancel and the 1s cancel, and now I do have that Y. The Y is equal to 7 divided by negative 1 is negative 7. And this minus and this negative cancel each other out. So 7 over 1 is just 7. So I have a plus 7X. Now this is just the solving for Y. And now it's going to come, if you solve for y first, it's going to make filling out the t-chart actually easier. I'm waiting for a little bit. The students are still trying to copy this down. We just learned about this yesterday, so we're still practicing. We will do more than just one of these. Okay, if you need more time on this, what you need to do is go to the YouTube video later and you can pause it to copy this down. So now that I've solved this equation for y, I want to use this just to fill out my t-charts. So I have y equals, and remember, we like to have our equation in this form where the x part is first and the plane number is next. So I want this x, this positive 7x, I want it to be listed first. And then this minus 7. So do you see that I can just switch these positions? Do you see? Is there a problem with that? Where I really want it to be in this form where the x value is first before the plane number. Up here, right here, the plane number was before the x. So I just switched places. The only thing about switching places is you have to make sure that the sign comes with it. So when I decided to put this first, it needs to be a positive, which it is. And then I wanted to put this last, and I have to use the negative or the minus. If you don't want to try switching, you can use this formula and it will work. Okay, this is the equation that runs this whole t-chart. So now we're going to solve this over and over and over again for the different x values. So the first one is I want to plug a 0 into this formula or equation. So I have y equals 7 times, now right now x is going to be 0. Plug your, substitute your values or plug them in with parentheses, always. So I have copied this equation down, and the only change I made was to plug in the x value that I'm working on right now. So I have y equals, and 7 times 0 is just 0, minus 7. So y equals a negative 7. Everybody okay with that? Okay. So when I plug in a 0 for x, I got the answer that y will be negative 7. And so I put a negative 7 there, or see how the 0 and the negative 7 go together? Now the next one is I'm going to plug in 1 for x. We're going to do this over and over again. So now our x value is 1. We're going to plug 1 in. So y equals 7 minus 7. 7 times 1 is 7. So y equals 0. Then we do the same problem over again, but this time I want to use 2 for x. I want to use 2 for x. So now I have y equals 14 minus 7. So y equals 7. Is there any question about what I'm doing? I want to stop right here. Okay, I see you, Victoria. Mary, you okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
Doris?
Yes, ma'am, I'm okay.
Hey, how about out here? Y'all okay? All right. So I'm going to do the 3 and the 4 here real quick. The 3, this is 7 times 3 gives me 21 minus 7. And so y is going to be 14. And one more. Using the same equation over and over again for a t-chart equals 7 times 4 minus 7. So now I have 28 minus 7, so y equals 21. If x is 4, y is 21. Now that I have the t-chart filled out, now I can use that information to graph this equation. What this t-chart does is gives us points on the graph. So we're going to plot this point. We're going to plot this point, this one, and this one, because this is the x, this is the y, this is the x, this is the y. We've been practicing plotting points on a graph. So I'm just going to freehand this. This is the x-axis. This is the y-axis. When we're plotting points, we always start at the center and we go this many steps on the x-axis, and then we move up and down this way. So the first time, I'll show you. So this point right here says start here, and on the x-axis, I don't move any, so I'm still here. And then it says when I get to the y, this -7, I need to go up and down from here. If it's negative, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So here's my first point. There's that point. The next one says I'm going to go horizontally 1 point from the center. So I'm going to go 1, but then up and down it says you don't move. So here's our next point right here. I'm trying to make little tiny marks because we have 21. So I've done that point. Now this says to go horizontally +2. So here's 1, 2. And from here, I need to go up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2 horizontally, and then up 7 gives us this point. Plotting this point, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go up 14. This is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So my next point is about right here, and one more. If I go 4, I need to go up 21. So that's 14, 15, 16, 17.
Yo lo hice negativo.
So right here. So after you have solved this for y, then you use this to fill out your t-chart, and then you plot your points. You should have a straight line. Notice if I drew a line, I'm not very good at freehanding straight lines. I have a student in here who is very good at that. If you get some graph paper, that'll be nice. It will help you in this. But notice that whatever points we came out with when we solved one equation, they will all line up in a straight line. So that's a way you can tell that you made a mistake. If you end up with a point here, this one's wrong. It has to be in a straight line. Does everybody understand what we're doing? Probably the challenge here is what we learned yesterday, is how to take the equation they give us and change it for y, solve it for y. right?
That's where I'm struggling.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we will just practice on that some more. But this is what you're going to do on this worksheet for all 9 problems. And so you'll probably need some scrap paper to do all your figuring on. They didn't give you very much room to work on these pages. Everyone should have this. I emailed it yesterday. And there's not a whole lot of room here for you to do your work, but they did give you a graph. Now, notice on these graphs, and this will happen on the GED test also, is that sometimes each one of these blocks will not be just 1. Notice that this one's counting by 7s. 7, 14. You have to make sure what they're counting by. Okay? This way they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but this way they go by 7s. So be careful to put your points where they need to go. Always look at how they numbered these. See this one? They numbered the x-axis by 2s, and they numbered the y-axis by 1s. So be careful where your dots go. Again, they changed on number 3, and they go by a different scale. Just follow the numbers. They did that so that your points will fit on the graph that they gave you. That's the only reason for this. All right, so this is number 1. Besides solving for y, do you need me to do another one of these on this page? I think you're okay. It's just the solving for y. But the plugging in, how about you all are remote? You don't have to say yes, 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 but if, good, thank you. That helps, Victoria.
I'm fine.
If you have a question, speak up, and sometimes it doesn't come over my computer very loud, and I'm deaf. Not really, but I'm getting there. And so you may have to holler at me if I don't acknowledge you, okay? All right, then let's look at the second page in your worksheet and see what we need to do there. By the time we get through with the lesson today, you should be able to do 9 of the 10 worksheets that are in this packet. We will talk about page 10 tomorrow. Let's look at number 2, page 2. Aha. Okay, on the only change on this, well, there's 2 changes. They first of all didn't put an X and Y axis. So you need to do that. You'll put your X remember goes across and the Y comes down. Okay. Now you get to choose your own X's here. You can use the same X's that they did if you want. My suggestion, and this was the suggestion they gave me at college in my classes, they said when you're filling out a T-chart, you should always use some negatives, some positives, and 0, always. So the numbers I used, and you do not have to use these, you can use any numbers you want. But the suggestion they said was the negatives, positives, and 0s, and keep the numbers small. So you don't have giant numbers to graph. Now the ones that I used were -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. You can use those if you want. You do not have to. So that's the only difference here. You're still going to solve this equation right here for y. I'm on page 2. You just have to solve this for y on a piece of scrap paper. Then choose your x's, plug them into the solved equation, and then plot those. Plot the points. That's all you're going to do on this page 2. Remember, you're learning. So if you know it all and you don't make mistakes, then you probably don't need to be in the class. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to ask questions. So please, please do not hesitate to ask questions. And in the classroom, I love it when y'all work together. All right. The next page, These equations seem to give people trouble, but they're actually so easy, there's no work to it. So let me show you. What if you have this? Y equals 4. You don't have any x in here at all. There's no x in this equation. But if we went ahead and made a t-chart, whichever way you want to make it, I really prefer the verticals. If you have a t-chart, let's do what we always do. This is solve for y, right? So I don't have to do any work there. I'm going to choose some numbers, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. You can choose anything you want for x. And now I'm going to plug these in and find out what y equals. So if x is a -2, there is no place to put an x. So what does y equal? Y equals 4. Do y'all see? Because there's no place for an x. Which happens again. If x is a -1, then what is y equal to? 4. What about if x is 0? What about if x is 1? Because there are no x's here. So if it says y is 4, y is 4, right? Well, let's just do the plotting and see what happens. Okay, here is your x and y axis. To plot this point, I need to start at 0, and I go -2, 1, 2, and then 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my point is right there. And then I'm going to plot this point. I'm going to go -1, 4. 0, 4. 1, 4. 2, 4. And then when you join those points, you notice that your line is a horizontal line. So the shortcut to this, so that you don't have to do a t-chart over and over and over again, is to remember if it's y equals 4, no x's, then your line will cross the y at 4. It crosses at 4. It's a line that just goes across at 4, no x's. Yes?
Yes.
The equal is true. X equals -3. Now the t-chart looks weird because you don't get to choose x's because x is -3. But if x is -3, no matter what happens, x is -3. Do y'all see? So whatever we have over here, x will always be -3. X is -3. So all the x's are -3. There's no choice here. So if I plot this point, I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it's right here. And then I'm going to plot this one. So I have -3, -1, -3, 0. Y'all see it's a straight line again, but it's a vertical line. So if you don't want to do the t-chart, you can always do the t-chart if you forget. But if you memorize x equals a number, then your line is going to cross the x axis at this number. See, -3. It's going to be a vertical line that crosses at x equals -3. You'll see. So x equals, you can put this in your notes. is a vertical line and its slope is undefined. If you're a memorized person, this works. Just memorize that if you have x equals a number, it's always a vertical line that goes through this number. And its slope is undefined. Remember our first day? And I told you an up and down line was undefined. So if we want to put the other stuff in your notes also, I'll write it up here. So if we have y equals 7, you just have y, then this is going to be a horizontal line. Use these notes because you're going to be using them on this and the next page, I think. It's a horizontal line and its slope equals 0. 0 and no slope are different. This one has a 0 slope. It's a horizontal line that goes through 7. If it's x equals a number, it's a vertical line that goes through that number. Probably one of the easiest things to do because you don't have to do a T-chart, but at the same time seems to be the most confusing for students. So I suggest to memorize. Everybody okay?
Yes.
Okay, that's what you'll be doing on page 3, which looks like this. This is page 3, and it says, just draw this line. X equals 3. Anybody want to tell me what that line will look like? X equals 3. What will that look like?
Undefined.
Okay, it'll be a vertical line and undefined. And where will it be on this graph? Where will you draw it?
On the positive side.
Okay, where on the positive side?
On the 3.
Yes, it will go through the 3 because it says x equals 3. Here's x and here's 3. So you're going to have a vertical line going just like this, straight down through the 3. The same will be true over here with the y equals 15. When it's y equals, it's going to be a horizontal line, yes? And it will go through the 15 on the y. So here's the y-axis, look for 15, and draw a horizontal line that goes through here. No need for a T-chart. Unless you forget, you can always draw a T-chart to remind you. In fact, I did that for a while when I was learning. It's either up and down or straight across. Now, on page 4, they went backwards. And they gave you a graph, and they said, what was the equation of this number 1? See the line right here? It's a vertical line that goes through 5 on the x. So what would the equation? X equals 5. That's exactly right. Because this vertical line goes through where x is 5. Yes? So on this one, you don't have the equation. You're going to write the equation. Got a message coming up. All right. Next page. I need to remind you about intercepts. This is the page I'm going to talk about now. The instructions say graph the line using the given intercepts. Now I need to remind you what intercepts are. Intercepts are these numbers on an axis. On an axis. So let me do this. If you have an intercept, a point that they call an intercept, then it will be on an axis. The point will be on an axis, okay? So if you have an x-intercept, then the point will be on the x-axis. If you have an x-intercept, intercept will always be on an axis. Gotcha. What are we doing? Y'all sit, don't interrupt. So if I say the x-intercept is 5, and I want you to plot that, then here's the x and the y. So the x-intercept will be a point on the x. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's the x-intercept right there. If they call it a y-intercept, it will always be on the axis, and this time it will be on the y-axis. Let's say the y-intercept is -2. So you go to the y-axis because it's a y-intercept and find -2. 1, 2, and there's the point. Then you draw a line through the 2 points, and that's graphing the line. An intercept will always be on the axis. If it says intercept, it will be on the axis. Notice that every time I draw a line, and they ask you to draw a line, the line goes through the points and has arrows, because the definition of line means that it goes on forever and ever. That's what these indicate. So let's look at number 1 and do it. It says that the x-intercept is 1 and the y-intercept is -1. Since they're intercepts, you know that we're going to be plotting on an axis. So the x-intercept is going to be at 1. That means on this here, I'm going to find 1. That's the x-intercept. The y-intercept will be on the y-axis at -1. You have 2 points, and 2 points will indicate and define a line. That's what you do on this page. Intercepts are on the axis, always. Questions on that page? You know, I think I want to teach page 6 differently. So I'm going to take care of that tomorrow. Oh, I keep saying page 10. There's only 8 pages in here, silly woman. Okay, so all I want you to do today is attack pages 1 through, what did I say, 5? 1 through 5, and then we'll talk about writing equations of lines and graphing equations of lines a different way. And you'll be happy to know a faster way tomorrow. But for now, I want you to do the first 5 pages in this worksheet. Everybody okay with that? All right, again, as always, you're welcome to stay on the Zoom with me as long as you need to ask questions as you work.